Hey guys, Trevor Banks again. Um, Welcome to class. Thank you so much for your patience. I know a lot of you have had difficulty with Blackboard and Moodle, all of that. Again, remember that your first assignments, your first week's quizzes, etc., are going to be due next Sunday, on Sunday that is today. Let's see, not the 28th, but in March, the first Sunday in March. So you watched Juno. You should have watched Juno already, and should have done the film statement assignment, the theme statement assignment, and engaged with the discussion boards, as well as read the first chapter and do the quizzes. So that's a lot of stuff, but try not to get behind. You have a little extra time, but you still need to keep up. This week, you need to read, obviously, Chapter 2 and go through all of that. There's a PowerPoint that goes along with it that's located in the materials. There's lots of videos in the online version of the book if you have access to that. And it's just great stuff. It's the beginning of a discussion about film form versus film content. The book doesn't really talk a lot about film content. It mainly talks about form in this chapter. I want you to be thinking about content. So last week, again, we talked about ideas and themes that are contained in a film, but also we need to be thinking about what does it say about those ideas, and this is what the thesis statement is going to be, the theme statement is going to be. So you go and you have a film like The Searchers that was mentioned, and so we see the form. The book talks a lot about expectations being set up, and we see that it goes against expectations, use of foreground, background, placement of the frame, etc., even though very clearly the composition's organized so that we see the foreground elements, and because there are these vectors in the frame, we see the hillside, and we see someone coming up over the hill. Because of that slight change, she's actually the focus of the frame, but we would expect maybe the foreground to be the thing that we are paying more attention to. It's contained all in one shot, and so we get this dynamic, this tension between foreground and background, and this dramatic irony where we know what's going on, but they don't know what's going on, and when will they figure it out? And we have to wait for her to come into the frame, and so there's this duration. We have a lot of that stuff going on, but what I want us to be thinking about is not just the way that editing and compositions and mise en scène, all of these things that are defined clearly in the book, not just how those things play into your viewing experience of a film, but also what is the content of the film and why is the form being used with this content. So I want us to be thinking that the film this week is Citizen Kane. AFI, which is my graduate school, was part of the conservatory at AFI. The AFI list, they go through and they had this list of the 100 greatest American films, and Citizen Kane was rated number 1. And the BFI lists often have the Sight and Sound polls also very frequently have that be the greatest film listed ever. I think just recently was the first time that it was not the number 1 film. It is one of the most seminal works. I'm not a huge Orson Welles fan. I'm just going to be honest, but it's undeniably this masterwork. We see Toland and we see Welles really work as a partnership in that film. I personally, just for your reference, prefer Toland's work with William Wyler a whole lot more. The way that Wyler uses compositions is just much more interesting and confined to me than the way that Welles uses it. I've had a lot of arguments with some of my best friends about how Welles fits in the canon. Some of my favorite critics think that Welles is the greatest filmmaker. He's not one of my favorites. But this film, which is also not my favorite of Welles, I like F for Fake a lot. I like The Magnificent Ambersons a lot. But this film is undeniably just a masterwork because of what it does with narrative. So we've got a tycoon based, pretty in a detailed way on Hearst as a historical figure. Many of you maybe have made the trek from, I don't know where all of you live, but if you've been in San Diego, maybe you've made the trek northward to Hearst Castle at some point. It's just this big tycoon, and we see the life of this man. But what does it say about his life? What does it say about wealth? What does it say about love? What does it say about relationships, humanity, things like that? What does the film have to say about all of these things? What would be really great for you in order to work your way through this film and other films is, what is the film? Just try and just write it out. What is the film doing? What does the film have to say? Or what is the film? How is the film structured? So is it you start with a baby, you end with an old man? Is that it? Clearly, that's not the case. We've got a situation where we start with one thing, and then we have lots of other things in between, and the time has shifted a lot. Your assignment is going to be not only to identify what the content is, and say, what are the themes? What is the film saying about the themes? But also, how does the form, in particular here, we talk a lot about the deep space in the cinematography. The parallel editing is something that's very interesting about Citizen Kane. But it'd be great for you to talk also about the narrative structure. Understand what the narrative structure is. That means, is it one through line? One scene, so we have a scene chronologically when he's 5, 6, 10, 15, 45, 75, 85, 95. Does it go like that? Clearly it doesn't. How do we engage with him? Who are the narrators? So what does it mean to be a narrator? From whose perspective is the story told? Is it verbalized? Are there characters through whom the story is told? And if so obviously in this film we see the story through other people's perspectives about this character, about this Hearst character, about Citizen Kane. How do we come to know who he is? How is the character established? How is the character defined? So think about people in your life. Think about the people that you like the most and the people that you don't like the most. How do you come to the conclusions about who they are? Oh, this friend of mine he's really reliable. Well, if he's really reliable, why have you come to that conclusion? Someone else may have a different conclusion about that friend. They may say he's not reliable or she's not reliable. So think about why you've come to those conclusions about those people in your own life. And as you do that, it will help you think about how a film does the same thing. How does a film establish what character trait these characters have? So what character traits does Citizen Kane have? What defines him? Is he selfish? Is he philanthropic? Is he good-hearted? And if you choose any of those, and you can say, well, all of them, but that doesn't help you a lot unless you can say what in the film leads you to those conclusions. What if you had to argue, he's selfish, and these are reasons why he's selfish. What are those reasons? Like, what, according to the film, what is it? Is it something that he did? Is it a choice that he made? Is it something someone else said about him? Instead of that, is it an action that you see? And who's in charge of that action? So what brings those things about? Is it the music that makes you think that about him or her? So just be thinking, what are the elements that lead you to those conclusions? Be able to articulate that. Those aren't necessarily things that are in an assignment now, but if you don't grasp those things now, I want you to start grasping those things now, because we will need that later on in the semester. So that's great. That's exciting. I want you to go through again, specifically to think about the way that it's structured narratively. Is it all continuous time? Is it linear, or is it non-linear? Whose perspective are we in? And how are we establishing this character? How does the narrative progress? What defines this narrative? So again, I know I've gone over this a lot, just for clarity's sake. Things that I want you to go over now are, for your assignment, the theme statement assignment. What is it what are the themes being discussed? Wealth, human relationships, I don't know, you figure that out. And then what is it saying about those things? You can't obviously come up with that if you haven't seen the film. Reading the chapter really helps for that as well, but you'll need to do that for the quiz, but it will also help you in identifying theme statements. That's it for right now. Thank you for your patience. I have 2 more days of shooting, and I will wrap very soon. I'll be in the editing room, but I'll have a lot more time to respond to your emails. Thank you so much for your patience again, and talk soon.